Thank you. Hi, guys. My name is Donnie Mosier, and I am a recovered alcoholic. Um, so I'm going to switch it up because every time I either give her a chip or announce her, I usually rip on her. That's my love language. But I'm not going to do that tonight because Q life, as we call it, being in this house together for the last month and a half. What's actually happened for, I think, between me and Heather is that it's either program time or trouble time. And so, what I want to say about Heather and what is probably so attractive about her to me is that she's not podium talk. She's not room talk. Um, Heather absolutely loves and lives this program. Before Q Life, there is a parade of women's coming in and out of this house 5, 6 days a week because she has always got 4 to 6 women in the book. She is probably one of the most honest people I know, to a fault almost. And sometimes I wish she would lie to me. And I just absolutely respect the way she lives Alcoholics Anonymous, and I just absolutely love her to pieces. Heather.
Thanks, David. Hi, guys. My name is Heather Mosier. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Thank you, babe, for nice words and not abusing me in a public forum. Appreciate it. Um, Everybody can hear me okay? I have like this weird speaker thing attached. So Heather Mosier, recovered alcoholic. My sobriety date is 8/26/16. That's only 3.5 years, but I'm really on fire for this program and for God. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to share my experience. Thank you, Mark, for asking me. What's really cool is I'm a really bad drug addict and alcoholic, so I have 7 felonies, and so this is the only way I ever get to come to Canada is through Zoom. So how cool is that? Y'all won't let me in. Here I am. A little bit about me. I think that I'm supposed to tell you what I was like and then what happened and what I'm like now. And I kind of think that that's more along the lines of before and after my spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, right? We all know what it was like to get loaded. And so I think that I'm also not going to bore you with too much of any childhood stuff because I really don't think that has anything to do with why I'm a chronic alcoholic. So I'm just going to say that some of the common threads that I have with what everybody else usually has is I've never felt a part of. I've never felt like I belong. I've never felt like I have a clique. I've never felt, I don't know, almost like there's this invisible barrier where y'all all bond with each other. My family, my cousins, aunts and uncles, y'all all seem to be bonded with each other. And I'm kind of always on the outside hoping I can get in. And I just never really felt like I could get in. And I always felt full of anxiety, full of anxiety. I remember I was the kid that would like throw up before I would go to school. I would think all day long about like who I'm going to sit with at lunch. Are my friends going to come sit with me, or am I going to be alone? If I'm in English class and we're like gonna like take turns reading paragraphs, I'm the kid that will count how many kids until my turn, and I'll read ahead and prep myself on that paragraph just so I don't fuck it up when it gets to me, because that would be too humiliating. Like I'm just paralyzingly insecure and full of anxiety. And I go through life like this. Like it never really just went away. I just stayed uncomfortable being me. And I remember I probably started drinking 14 or so. 14 or so, definitely have outside issues as part. I always mixed them, but alcohol was always a common denominator. It was always in the background. It was always there. And I remember always drinking more than my fair share. I always remember as soon as the alcohol goes in, there's bets are on. There's no telling what I'm going to do, where I'm going to end up. But I really just thought everybody drank like that, so I didn't think much of it. When I graduated high school at 18, I was really, really burnt out on the partying lifestyle. So I decided I'm going to get my shit together. I'm going to move away. My high school boyfriend and I moved a couple hours away, and we quit partying, we quit drinking. And one thing unique about my story is I managed to stay sober for the next 13 years, from 18 to 31. And I was not a happy person. I was not a joy to be around. What I was a victim of the delusion that I was going to finally achieve happiness if I just arranged some shit a certain way. And so what that looked like was buying a house at 19. What that looked like was having a baby at 21 and getting married at 22 and another baby at 24 and a different husband at 29. And I was constantly thinking, if I just arrange my life, X, Y, Z, I work for myself, I do this, I do that, then I was finally going to achieve happiness. And I would be quite virtuous. I would make those things happen, and 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 the happiness was so short-lived. I was chronically discontented in life. You couldn't get me happy, and so I started thinking. One unique thing about my childhood is I grew up with a paranoid schizophrenic Pentecostal mother. That is a really fun combo if you want some traumatic childhood shit. And so going into my adulthood, um, I just remember thinking like, I want to be a good mom. I want to do things with my kids that she never did with me, and this and that. I had a lot of bitterness, a lot of resentment around the way some of the things from my childhood. So I had a couple kids. Turns out I'm not really a kid person. I should always have known that before I had a couple. And I think that that was like a spiritually sick Heather. Spiritually sick Heather doesn't have the patience for kids. Spiritually sick Heather is just annoyed with everyone. Everyone. I seriously would have like some really dark thoughts. Like, I'm either brilliant or I'm surrounded by idiots my entire life. Like, these are some stupid shit that would go in my head. And my first husband, bless his heart, couldn't handle me, and I got rid of him, and I got a different husband. And for this 13-year chunk of time, um, I went to every like psychologist and therapist and counselor that you could imagine, and I would pour my heart out, and I would talk about things, and they did their best to try to help me, and they prescribed some medicines, and I had a plethora of diagnoses over the next decade. I was never fully honest with them, and towards the end, basically, no treatment ever seemed to relieve me of myself. I was constantly thinking that the next cocktail of whatever was going to be the thing that got me happy. And this next diagnosis or this next medicine we're going to add to this medicine, maybe now I can be okay. And it would be like this placebo effect of me hoping that I would finally be able to be happy, and it just never worked out. I was just not happy. What I know today is that there's no chemical solution to a spiritual problem, and I had no clue what was going on with me at that time, or why the medicines didn't work for me, yet they worked so well for other people, including my mom. They had chemical imbalances. I didn't. And so I'm going through life, and I would have thoughts around like taking care of my kids, of like, I want to be a mom. I want to take care of them. I want to read a book to them, but I really just couldn't find this motivation or this drive to like do these things. I struggled with what looked like debilitating depression and anxiety and irritability. And so I have this like catalyst event that happened. My second marriage, we were really good friends. I thought it was going to be okay. It was gonna stick. And he deployed for a while and came back. And then we had this weird chunk of like 3 years where he wasn't interested in me. And I didn't know what was going on. And so around that same time, some other medicines and some other diagnoses, and I really feel like I'm losing touch with reality, and I don't know what's happening. I don't even know what to believe. And so I started abusing one of the prescription medications that I was given for a diagnosis. And around the same time, I accidentally found out that my husband number two was gay, which is okay. I just wish that he had married me instead. I wish I had known that going in. So basically, this catalyst was like the thing that gave me permission to finally say F it and self destruct. And so I went on a bender to end all benders. I left my kids with their dad, and I left home, and I pretty much never went back. Within 5 days, outside issues to the 10th degree on top of alcohol are surfaced. And within a year and a half, I had 7 felonies. I'm not a smart alcoholic. I get caught. I just don't know how to not do that. There's a whole bunch of shit that I didn't get caught for too, but I kept getting in trouble. And so my family started sending me to this little detox. I'm born and raised in Oklahoma, and so I was in Oklahoma, and they would send me this little detox, and I went 3 times. And you stay for 7 days, and you get a little pamphlet or two, and they pat you on the butt and send you on your way. And I go right back to it every time. I get loaded within hours of leaving. And even all the times that I was locked up in jail, the first few times, it's a traumatic thing. You cry. You're like, I'm never touching this shit again. I'm absolutely going to be sober. Please, God, get me out of this, and I'm going to do this, what, X, Y, Z. And they kept letting me out of jail. And I kept going right back to it. I kept getting loaded. I think I managed to do 2 days once. And so this pattern started to develop, and I couldn't understand what was going on. 18-year-old Heather could make the choice to put the drink away and not pick it back up. And all of a sudden, 31-year-old Heather seems to not be able to do that. And I have no clue why. None whatsoever. One thing I forgot to mention that's kind of important later is when I was 29 years old, and this is about 2 years before alcoholism takes over my life. I'm sober at this time. But I remember being at Thanksgiving with my family. My mom, my dad, my sister are all in the room with me, and my dad is talking to my family about me, like I'm not there, but I am, and I can hear him. And I remember my dad saying to them, Heather there's just something wrong with her mentally. She's just morally bankrupt and spiritually defective. She's just abrasive. This is why nobody likes her. And I just remember like thinking how wrong he was, that he didn't effing know me, and he didn't know what I'd been through and all this crap, right? And looking back on it now, my dad could see what was wrong with me before I had a clue. Before I had a clue, my dad could see this spiritual malady of how corrupt I was my internal condition. And add to it, once I'm 31 and I have completely lost the power of choice, and I'm getting drunk despite my desire to be sober, and I have no clue what's going on. And so I'm making all of these promises that I mean, and my dad's picking me up from this house or picking me up from jail here, and I'm making promises, and my pattern is showing I'm going right back. And I remember my dad like saying, like, don't you love your kids enough? Don't you, this? And I did. I loved them more than alcohol, but I seemed to not be able to leave it alone. And I couldn't understand why I couldn't find enough willpower to make this happen. And so I went in and out of jail, in and out of detoxes. I even moved to Kansas with a guy trying to get sober. That didn't work. We come back, and my dad gave me a gift. 5 or 6 months before then, he had said, I had called him asking him to bring me food wherever I was, and he wouldn't bring me food. And he said, Heather, do not ever call me again unless you're ready to go to treatment. Unless you're really ready to go to treatment again, I'm not bringing you food, giving you money. I'm not picking you up. I can't help you anymore. He said, you need more help than what I can give you. And so it took me almost 6 months. I went to a couple different states and came back. And before I'm alone in a hotel room in Oklahoma. And my best friend had bought me the Jesus Calling book that's so famous in the program. And I didn't. She had left it at a hotel for me to get once. And so I had it. And tucked inside it was a picture of me and her. Sorry. So I called my dad. She wanted me to get sober. I wanted to be done. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I called my dad. And the really fucked up thing about what went on in my head that day was the guy that lived in the hotel room underneath me was supposed to buy me outside issues when he got off work that day for free. And that was the deal. And for whatever reason, I broke, and I called my dad and I said, come get me. I'm ready to go to treatment. He pulled up, and so my dad drives really slow. He's a slow old dude in Oklahoma, and it would take him around an hour and a half to get to where I was. But he pulled up in that parking lot in 45 minutes, and so did the guy that lived under me in the hotel room. And so I had this choice: wave my dad away like I'd always done, never mind, I'm not ready, and go get loaded, or leave with my dad. And for whatever reason, I just couldn't tell him to go that time. And so I went with my dad, and he took me back to that same detox because we were trying to figure out where to send me longer. And there's a man at that detox. He had his business card, and I called and I said, "Hey, I have this insurance, and here's what's going on. Do you know a place that will take me?" And he said, "Absolutely. There's this place near Kerrville, Texas." And he gave me the name and number of the lady. And I'd never heard of Kerrville, Texas. I didn't know what a Kerrville was, right? And so I called this place, and they explained to me how this works, and that my insurance is apparently pretty cool, and we'll even fly you out for free. And I thought, oh my God, how cool is that? I get to go on an airplane, and um, my parents were so done with me. My family was so done with me that they didn't even pick me up from detox to go put me on the plane to come to Texas. They sent the best friend that had left the Jesus Calling book and my stuff. And so she came and picked me up. And she said, "Mama said I got to get you directly to the airport. I'm not allowed to take you nowhere." No, she gave me money. She brought me a bag for my stuff, and I got on a plane and I went to Texas with a backpack. And 7 felonies and an unreported probation issues. So I go to treatment in beautiful Kerrville, Texas. And I remember the lady that picked me up from the airport explaining to me about this sober town, Kerrville, and how there's all these sober houses, and there's all these meetings to go to, and there's this whole fellowship. I have had no experience with AA. I have no clue what Alcoholics Anonymous is. In my mind, AA is old dudes sitting around talking about their problems, drinking coffee. I have no idea about anything else. And I'm like, what the hell is this sober town? And the way she described it, I thought every single person that lives in this town is in recovery, is sober, that normal people don't live there. I think it's just a town just for like special us, right? I'm like, how cool, they have a town just for us. So I go to treatment, and I remember these 2 men teaching Big Book. These 2 men teaching Big Book. And I remember going to, well, back up. In detox, they made me sit in detox for a few days before they put me on the regular floor, even though I was already detoxed because it was the weekend. And they handed me my first Big Book. And they handed me my first Big Book, and I remember laying in that detox bed, and they told me to underline anything that catches my eye, anything I kind of identify with. And honestly, the only thing that I highlighted that caught my eye was a sentence on 51 that says, "Leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory." Leaving aside any drink question, leaving aside any outside issues, life just sucked for me. I didn't want my old life back. I was just never happy being me. I was full of what I thought was like anxiety and depression, and I just didn't want it. The alcohol was the one thing that made me less depressed and less anxious. And so I just didn't know what being sober meant. I thought being sober just meant taking away the alcohol, and I didn't want that life back. It was miserable, but I didn't want either. And so I didn't understand. So I highlighted that, and I remember getting to go to Big Book class and going to step 1 and 2 and 3, and man, there was this dude with the cycle of addiction from the doctor's opinion on this board, and just breaking down this mental obsession and this physical allergy, these 2 qualifying questions that make me a chronic alcoholic. And my mind is like exploding. I'm like, oh my God, that's what's fucking wrong with me. Like, no one has ever explained it. I can't explain it. That the moment that I was like, this is what I have. I didn't have all of the other things that the psychiatrists and the therapists tried to say maybe I did, I thought maybe this is the thing that I have all along. And turns out I had some other stuff along with it. But so what happens is I go through treatment, and I meet this chick. She comes and does an H&I. And she seems really badass and keeps talking about God and the F word. And I really like her. I'm like, this bitch got to sponsor me. I really like her. So she agrees to sponsor me, and they take me to our first outside meeting in town. This is my first experience in an AA meeting, and it's a birthday night / speaker meeting. And I don't know if there was just no other guys, but he was it. He was it for an hour. The energy that came out of him reminded me of the energy that was coming out of the guy teaching Big Book at treatment. And he was just on fire for this program. on fire for God. And he was telling his story. He did a bunch of the same fucked up shit that I did. He was out there, and I was like, but this guy is like sober and happy. Like, y'all gotta be kidding me. Like, what's the secret? I don't believe y'all. But there just seemed to be this energy about it. And I remember when we circled up and I was in a room of about 200 people doing the Lord's Prayer, that was the first time in a really, really, really long time that I'd felt God. Um, I felt God there, and I knew in my gut, I could like hear my gut saying, stay here. You need to be here. This is what you need. And I was like, yeah. So I get out of treatment. I go to sober living, and I meet a boy. There's always a boy. And so I get a boy, and he doesn't stay sober. And I don't stay sober, but I didn't get caught yet. And so I picked up a 3-month dirty chip, and I felt really, really horrible about it. I just felt like everybody fucking knew. And so what that actually required was a bigger explosion than ever. So that came, right? So then everybody in town knows I'm out. And so then there was another 10-month period of in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. And I keep calling this, 911 sponsor, and she's meeting me at this porch or this house or this, saying, here's what we do. Here's what we do. And I just think she's wrong. And she keeps talking about these steps, and I just don't understand why they're so important to her. I just want to be happy. And it's just not clicking. It's not clicking at all. And so 10 more months of misery. And I remember I probably had a stack of somewhere around the neighborhood of 20 desired chips. And I remember towards the end of my last run going to like a noon meeting. They called it a brown bag. I'd go to this noon meeting thinking nobody will know me there, and I can get a chip there. And so I did. And I remember going back to my chair, and this old man in the corner, he's like, young lady, that could be your last one. And I'm like, and I was crying. and it wasn't my last one. And I wanted to be sober so bad, right? I wanted it so bad, and I couldn't figure out what piece of the puzzle I wasn't doing, which was the steps, but I was oblivious to that. And so there's some bad shit that happens, and I call a friend and I said, I need to go back to treatment again. I need to go back to treatment again. And so I go back to treatment again, same treatment center, frequent flyer. They're like, hey girl. I'm like, hey, I'm back again, and I had some dramatic experiences with God. And so for the rest of this, I'm going to be telling you some of the really cool things God's done for me. Some of the really cool shit, the reason that I'm on fire for this program, and the way that it's worked for me. So I have always had faith in God. I had faith in God every time I got loaded. It didn't do me any good. Faith alone is insufficient. And so I go back to treatment, and a guy that knew me from town came to do an H&I, and he's arguing with me afterwards because I'm not writing a new 4-step. Fuck that. I'm going to use this whole 4-step that I started with this other girl. And he was so mean to me, dude, and I needed it. I have that personality where I need you to just cut me to ribbons with the truth. I'm going to be pissed at you for a while, but I'm going to go simmer on it alone, and I'm going to realize you're right, and I'm going to do what you said, but it just takes me a minute to get there. And so Tony was his name, and he was really mean to me, and I was so mad. I was just crying, and I ran back to my little room in rehab, and I'm crying, and I remember just having this epiphany, and I don't know if he said it, or if it was just like God said it and it stuck in my head. But the message was, if you're going to get connected to God, the relationship has to start somewhere. Somewhere. Where is this relationship that you're going to be dependent on? That everybody says you need to get connected to power. Lack of power is my dilemma. I need to be connected to this power. I'm like, well, I already fucking believe in the power. They're like, cool, that's good, but it doesn't mean shit because you're still not staying sober. So you're not connected. You're blocked off. And so I remember that for that first week in treatment, God had been nudging me in my consciousness to get on my knees and pray before I went to bed every night. And I was always like, nah, too busy, push that thought out of my head. And I remember sometimes I'd be laying in bed, my head's already on my pillow, and the thought would come, get out, get on your knees and pray. And I would say no, like not audibly, but in my head I would say no, I'd ignore it and go to sleep. So that when that fight with Tony happened, and I go back to my room and I have this message of, your relationship with God has to start somewhere. I knew that I needed to give and start listening. And so I got on my knees and I prayed. And I got on my knees and I prayed every night for the rest of the 3 weeks that I was in treatment. And I prayed for three things specifically because I didn't even know for sure what to pray about. And I don't even remember what one of them is. I just know that there was three, but the two that I remember was I wanted to know where to go when I got out of treatment. Was I supposed to go back to sober living in Kerrville? Should I just go serve my 5 years in prison, get it done with? Should I go to Austin? Should I go? I didn't know. Where am I supposed to go? I had been kicked out of nearly every female sober house in Kerrville, some multiple times. And so my other prayer was for God to please give me any contact with my kids. At that point, it was around 5 years, 4.5, and I had had no contact with them, none allowed at all. And I left when they were 7 and 10. So do the math, 4.5 years later. And I was a stay-at-home mom for 10 years before that, so it was a dramatic difference. So I'm praying, and I get a new sponsor, and I start working these steps. They're like, you got to work these steps. And so the sponsor's coming up to my treatment center once a day, usually, and staying for hours working these steps with me. And I'm praying every night, and I'm trying to do everything that she suggests me, and I'm writing my resentments, I'm writing my fears, I'm writing my sex inventory. I'm making a sane and sound, and I'm not to brag, but I did get voted president of rehab one week, and so that happened. And I just thought, because I'd already been around Kerrville for a while, I knew that book. I could say some cool shit, but I couldn't live any of it. I had no clue. I was talking about out my ass the whole time. I had no clue what it meant or looked like to rely on God. I used to get so fucking pissed off that people will say, let go and let God. What does that look like? That sounds pretty when you say it, but please tell me what to do, because I don't know. What does it look like? Does it mean I do nothing? I just didn't know. And so this is what the steps started teaching me, was what it really looked like to put my money where my mouth is, to rely on God. And so one of the cool miracles that happened was I'm approaching my last few days in rehab, and I'm praying every night, sometimes twice a night. I'd get up to go pee. God would say, hey, get on your knees and pray again. I would do it. I'm surrendered to this thing. And what I didn't know that I know now is that fight with Tony after that H&I, he helped me find my gift of surrender. And I've remained surrendered to this to the best of my ability, I think, for 3.5 years. And so I start praying, and I'm consistent with my prayers, and I'm consistent with the step work. And I have 4 days left in treatment, and God has not answered me yet about where to go when I get out of treatment. And so push is coming to shove. I'm going to have to make a decision, but I don't want to make a decision based in self. So I go to this outside meeting, and I run into a woman who had kicked me out of her sober house 3 times. And so I had made the decision, this was a Sunday, I made the decision that since God hadn't answered me, come Monday morning, I'm going to call the rehabs, the sober livings that haven't kicked me out. I'm going to call the ones that haven't kicked me out and ask if they would take me with no money. But God intervened, and he stepped in. And the day before I was going to make those calls, I went to an outside meeting, and I ran into a woman who had kicked me out 3 times. And I would have never called her. And she came up and hugged me, and she asked me, when do I get out? And I said, Friday. And she said, well, where are you going? And I said, I don't know. And she goes, well, I have one bed. It just became available last night. Do you want it? And I said, yeah, but I don't have any money. And she goes, I don't care. I know you're good for it. She goes, I see something in you that you don't see in yourself. And so she extended grace to me for the 4th time unnecessarily. God intervened. And so I was so thrilled that I have somewhere to go. And so I go back to the rehab, and I wait for the phone hour, and I call my mom to let my mom know, hey, not homeless. I'm going back to the sober house. It's all good. And she goes, that's amazing news. Hey, your daughter's here. Would you like to talk to her? So God answered those 2 prayers before I even got the fuck out of treatment, dude. It really lit a fire under me where I was like, oh my God, not like God, some like Candyman raining down things I asked for, but it really like finally gave me this like motivation of I'm seeing the results of doing the program. I'm seeing the results. And so um, I got out of treatment and immediately finished the steps within 2 or 3 weeks. And so I'm 2 months sober, sponsoring others, going back up to that rehab. And I'm doing H&Is, and I got my first sponsee, and I was so insecure about it. I just thought, I told my sponsor, I'm gonna screw this girl up. I'm gonna fuck this girl up. And she goes, baby, you're not that powerful. You are not that powerful. Just show her what I've shown you. That's all you do. I said, okay. And so I'd be real nervous, but I would just try to pass it on. And she stayed sober. And then I got another one and another one. And it was just so cool. I remember trying to do this 12-step call for a boy that we did all wrong. 2 girls trying to go get a boy in San Marcos, Texas. All this, it was just all wrong. But long story short, he had a bunch of alcohol and outside issues on him that we got rid of and helped him get to treatment because he overdosed when he got in our car. And on the way back to Kerrville, I just remember thinking like, oh my God, I didn't even want to save any for later. Like Heather saved some for later. Heather's like, oh, he didn't want that, you know. I just thought, and I looked over at my friend Jennifer. I said, I think I'm fucking recovered. Like I didn't even want to do it. Like, because they in Kerrville, they really teach you out of the book. I was blessed to grow up in some amazing home groups out there where they're really talking about what the book is saying and what it means. And I knew that the mental obsession had been lifted due to my connection to the power, which I choose to call God. And I knew that if I maintain my spiritual fitness, I can remain recovered. And I don't have to fight the drink or the drug idea anymore. And so I think it's important that we talk about that, because I still hear people sometimes with 5, 10 years sober talking about just fighting every day. Oh, it's a fight. You got to fight addiction every day. And if I hit my head on my pillow at the end of the night and I'm still sober, by golly, that's enough. And I want to say bullshit. That's not, they've missed the point of this whole program then. The program is we work the steps, and what's really cool is after 10, you should be placed in this position of neutrality, safe and protected, where it's just been removed. That is the miracle of it. That's the sweet spot that I want to live in. And so I'm just really sick, and so I try to throw myself into the tools the program's given me, and it's just worked. It's just worked. I just remember that happened, and I knew I was recovered, and so I kept sponsoring. And so I'm about 3 months sober, and I won't go into detail, but my sex conduct was not cool at 3 months sober, and God wasn't cool with it either, and he let me know it. And so I was reading page 70 in the floor of my sober house bedroom, crying my eyes out, and I made a pact with God. 3 months, no dudes. And I got so close to women and God in those 3 months, it radically changed my relationship with God and with women. And I didn't know how to be a friend. I didn't know how. I just thought I got along better with dudes. Every girl that has issues with sex conduct is going to say, oh, I just get along better with dudes. And every guy that has issues just be like, I just like chicks just like me. I just get along better with chicks. Well, the point is, you need to learn how to get along with your sames. You know, I needed to learn how to get along with women and how to be a friend. And so God showed me that. Another cool thing is I was about a year sober, and I remember I had some unfinished amends in Oklahoma. Husband number 2, remember? Husband number 2, good guy, but I took him to the cleaners. I stole so much of his stuff and pawned it, including an AK-47 I tricked off. I've done so much. I don't know how I could possibly repay him. And I'm thinking, okay, I need to start making these amends. And he calls me out of the blue, and he asks me if I would be willing to sign a paper that's basically signing away my right to half his retirement. And I said, you know, are you asking me to sign away my rights to your retirement? And he goes, yeah, I need the money. I need the help. I'm asking you to do that. Boom. God was showing me that this is my only way I can make it right. God is showing me I could never repay for this guy for all the stuff I had pawned. And so I said, absolutely. Do you need to mail it to me? And he's like, no. Me and Aaron are driving down. I'll be there in 2 days. I'm like, oh, fuck. And so he came down, And I said, I'm perfectly willing to sign. Will you let me make an amends to you? And he agreed. And so we went to the FedEx. I notarized and signed away my rights to half of his retirement. And I made my amends to him at a little park bench. And I walked away from that with such a clear conscience that God had given me the gift to be able to do that, that I would never have been able to execute that on my own. And I can't tell you how many times my family, including my own mother, who told me I was stupid for doing this. She's like, why are you doing this? You've been married to him. You're owed this. You deserve this. And he tricked you. And I said, no, Mom. What God is telling me is that if I feel any sense of entitlement or greed to his retirement, I won't stay sober. I have to let it go. I'm either going to choose to make God everything or God nothing. I don't need him or that money. I need to choose God. This is something that I feel convicted about. And God has completely taken care of me. Completely taken care of me. And so fast forward, and I'm about 14 months sober. And I come to somewhere 4.5 hours away, little town called Houston. Maybe you've heard of it. Come to a little town called Houston with my best girlfriend. She had a possible breast cancer stuff, so we were coming to the MD Anderson Treatment Center place out here. And we come here 4 different times. Her sister is in AA as well here, and so we go to some meetings, go to some meetings, go to some meetings, go to some meetings. And on the fourth time I come out here, I meet this cool dude named Donnie. And we really have a lot in common. And he happened to know that my whole left sleeve is Alice in Chains reference. Nobody really picks that up unless you're a diehard Alice in Chains fan. And he happened to understand that. And so we really bonded. Um, but he had some shit he was still in the process of cleaning up. He wasn't my sane and sound yet. And I had already made enough mistakes to know I wasn't going back. I couldn't go backwards. God wasn't going to let me do it. And so I told him where my bar was, and I told him I was going back to Kerrville, and that if you're ever single and you meet this bar, you call me. I'll be willing to date you long distance. So we did. He did. He had been consistent, and he showed me that he was a man of integrity, and he was putting his money where his mouth was. And so he would drive 4.5 hours every weekend to come date me in Kerrville. And we did this for many, many months. And then he wanted me to move here. And so this cool story, I did not want to make a decision based in self that later placed me in a position to be hurt. I had done that over and over and over again, every freaking decision in my life. And so my sponsor gave me a cool suggestion. She goes, well, what are your reasons for not wanting to leave Kerrville? What are your reasons for wanting to move? What are, you know? And I was like, I had a long list of pros and cons. She goes, okay, now what I want you to do is throw that away. Throw away the pros and cons. She goes, I want you to go make a contract with God on paper. You write it, contract with God. Here's the things that I think God wants me to take care of before I would consider leaving Kerrville. So I make a contract with God, and there's about 8 or 9 things on that list, including pay off all my probation, pay up my back rent in the sober house, just all sorts of things. I even had an elderly Chihuahua that a lady had given me that had a lot of health issues, and I didn't know what to do about this freaking Chihuahua. He was 14 and his health was failing. His name was Mr. Big. And I loved this dog, but I just didn't know what to do with it. So I had all these things, this list, I need to figure out these things. And so I felt like this list is complete. These are the things God wants to hold me to before I would consider leaving Kerrville. And I called Donnie. I read the list to Donnie. And he was like, well, fuck, Heather, this is going to take forever. And I said, it might. But I can't bend on my contract with God for you. Then we have nothing anyway. And so he's like, all right. He got down with it. And I shit you not, God took care of the entire list in 2.5 weeks. The job I had just gotten a week earlier, Christmas time, gave me 4 bonuses. I paid up my $800 back rent, paid my $1,000 probation fees. And even sadly, the dog had some seizures and his heart filled up with fluid, and I had the money to put him down and held him the whole time. Basically, God gave me the green light, and God had just wanted me to include him in the process all along anyway. Living in Kerrville, living in Houston, God didn't care as long as I was opening the door for him to be a part of every aspect of my life. And so I moved out here, and Donnie does this like I do this, and we got married about a year ago almost, and so we have a really cool life out here. But I just want to reiterate some cool things that have come from this. I am 7 years removed from my kids, 3.5 years sober now, and I'm just now this past February, I'm off paper. I'm done with all my legal issues. I've had this had a second accountability contract with God that was all my legal stuff, all this nightmare of IDs and birth certificates and social security cards and community service and legal issues. And it's taken me 2 years to finally complete this process with God, but God's held me to it. Um, and what's really cool is I remember my sponsor telling me, when you're done with the community service, I'm going to give you about 2 weeks to get a job. And I'm like, what? 2 weeks to get a job? Why would I do that? Donnie makes plenty of money, you know? And she was like, that's cute. She goes, that's cute. We weren't married yet. She goes, that's cute. She goes, I don't care if you're flipping burgers. I don't care what you're doing, but you still owe financial amends, and you can't let Donnie pay your amends for you. I'm pretty sure Donnie's not going to want to get in the way of you getting to God. So that's not going to work. So I don't care if you're flipping burgers. I don't care what you're doing, but I'll give you 2 weeks to get a job. I was like, fuck, okay. So I was finishing up my community service. Apparently, I'm a really good ethical worker, and so they offered me a job. So I took that job for the seasonal, and as that was closing out, not one, not two, but three sponsees of mine called me in the same day, telling me about a job being a recovery coach at an adolescent APG here in Houston. And I thought, well, that sounds cool. And then by the third sponsee, she was like, hey, I've even called the guy hiring and told him about you. You should get an email from him soon. And so I got an email from this guy asking my resume, and I'm like, shit, now I got to make a resume. What does a recovery coach resume look like? Let me make that. Okay, let me send to you, right? And so that's who I work for today. But what's really, really cool, and we were kind of talking about this in the beginning, God is just a part of all of this all along. He's so preparing me for getting my kids back into my life. The irony is not lost on me that I'm getting paid to help children that aren't mine, that are the exact same age of the kids I'm not even allowed to speak to, that are mine, you know? And some things have come up this last 2 weeks or so. My daughter, the oldest, is at my parents' house, and my son is at a different grandma's, so they're actually not even with their dad. And so as soon as the courts open, I think God's lining up some things to make some changes. But basically, what I want to reiterate is that this program, the steps have gotten me connected to a power that has solved all my problems, that has enabled me to match calamity with serenity. It's given me a life much better than what I had before. I didn't fucking want that one back. I wanted something new and better and full of happiness and joy and purpose. And that's exactly what God has given me. And I'm not unique and I'm not special in that. That's possible for anybody who does this deal. And I think that when we look at the steps and we look at what it's designed to do, it tells us clearly on 14, a price had to be paid. It's the destruction of self. I hate it when people say this is a selfish program. Please show me where that's at in the book. You're not even going to be able to find a line that implies that this is a selfish program. But I can show you a lot of places where it says we must be harder on ourselves and considerate of others. We're supposed to throw ourselves into helping others and work for them. The destruction of self is the goal. The causes and conditions on 64. And it's like, I'm doing all of this inventory to find out what my causes and conditions are, AKA my character defects, AKA self manifested in various ways. Top of 71 tells me that that is what separates me from God. Not any shitty childhood I may or may not had. Some of us did and some of us didn't. None of that makes you chronic. Allergy and obsession make me chronic, and my character defects separate me from God. And I have no defense against the first drink. And so then when I work these steps and I get connected to God, all of a sudden the mental obsession's lifted, and I'm just recovered, and I get to live in this cool life. And my favorite line, my favorite little chunk in the big book, and I'll close with this, is in A Vision for You. And the bottom of 52 says, have you a sufficient substitute? And it says, yeah, we have a substitute, and it's vastly more than that. There's this fellowship, and it says, well, how are we to find this fellowship? Where am I to find these people? And it says, well, you're going to meet these new friends in your own community near you. Well, maybe on Zoom, maybe y'all aren't too near me, but it says, among them, you will make lifelong friends. You will be bound to them with new and wonderful ties, for you will escape disaster together, and you will commence shoulder to shoulder on your journey. Then you will know what it means to give of yourself that others may survive and rediscover life. And I love that line because, and then it ends with the love thy neighbor as thyself. But I have learned what it means to give of myself so that others may rediscover life. If I could give anyone a gift, wave a magic wand, work the steps honestly, thoroughly, go sponsor at least 10 people. Then you might understand what this program is really about. Attempt it with at least 10 people, get a few through the steps, because that's where the magic is. The magic wasn't in my own step work. That just prepared me to understand how to do the program. And so the meetings aren't even the program. There's people that have meeting-based sobriety and that works for them. Cool. I'm not. I might eat a bullet. I need to be connected to some real power. And I love that the meetings are not the program. The meetings are where I go to find the people to do the program with. And so now we can do it virtually. I heard a fifth step last week from a girl in prison on the phone. Tell me that's not God. I should be in prison. Instead, I got this cool freaking life and I'm helping others, and I get to watch them rediscover life. And the thing I want to leave you with is that we need you. We need you. There is not enough good sponsors. There is not enough people doing it out of the book. People are still in misery. People are still dying needlessly. And people come out of treatment thinking 90 and 90 and meeting makers make it, and they have no clue what the real solution is. And we need you. We need you. And I remember being in treatment for that last time with Tony saying that. We need you. We need you on the front lines. We need you going to sorted spots. And then I just couldn't grasp why he needed me. You seem to be doing just fine. And the idea I want to leave you with is there are people that you are meant to sponsor. There's people that you will have depth and weight for that I never could. There's people that God will bring across your path. I've had some really cool experiences. The second girl I've ever sponsored, I'm hearing her fifth step, and she gets to her mom, and her mom is schizophrenic, and her childhood was unsafe as a result of that, and real specific, just like mine. And I froze and I stopped her, and I went and grabbed my notebook and I started reading my inventory on my mom to her, exact same. And I said, "Did you know this about me when you asked me to sponsor you?" She didn't know. She started bawling. And you get to have these cool experiences like this. I'm tailor-made to sponsor some people, and so are you. And so I'm just really grateful for my life. I hope I've said some things that help get you on fire for God in the program, the steps, because we need you and we need everybody to be on fire. And I love you guys. Thank you.